Welcome to the Real Estate Startup Podcast. I'm your host, Benjamin Goodpasture, and today we have Daniel Miller on. Daniel Miller is a real estate broker. He's also a real estate investor, amazing human being. I really like this guy. I know a lot of realtors that work underneath his brokerage, and everyone that I know has nothing but good things to say about this guy. He's just amazing. And so really enjoy this podcast. We talked about his journey starting out in real estate in '08 during the crash, and how he went from like working at Verizon where they weren't really catering to customer needs. It was all about KPIs, making money. And he was like, this isn't for me. I don't like this method of selling. I want to sell things and I want to help people. So that's what launched him into real estate. And he kind of went back and forth until the market corrected, but he just stuck with it and didn't give up during one of the most challenging times to be a realtor during the Great Recession. And so, man, I felt like he just had so much wisdom to share on, how to take care of people, customer service, what really works. He often talked about reps, and when you're working out, like doing a lot of reps, practicing your craft, the more you practice it, the better you are. Like if you're an athlete, the more you practice, the better you're going to be for game time. And so, yeah, you hear him talking about that, just being prepared for opportunity. And I can't agree more that when you are practicing your craft, when you are preparing and studying and learning, that attracts opportunities. And so I've learned that. Daniel has learned that. He talks about it a lot in this podcast. And I think that's a big takeaway if you want to get into real estate investing. And that's just to practice. The more you do it, get around people, listen to podcasts, audiobooks, get your real estate license. That's a great way to get in the game or work for somebody, get a mentor. So I think the more you surround yourself with people that are beyond you, the more you'll catch. Oftentimes parents, we say this as parents, that we don't really teach our kids. They more so catch how we live life, how we talk to each other, how we love each other. So just want to encourage you, if you want to get into real estate, if you're new to it, get around people that are ahead of you. Find mentors, find contractors, investors, real estate agents, and take them out to coffee. Like, babysit their kids, just get in their life, and you'll find that if you add value to them, they will add value to you. So that's it. Enjoy the podcast. Unfortunately, Michaela could not make it. She had a sick child, not her child, but her housemate's child who needed her. So she's not on this podcast, just me interviewing Daniel. Enjoy. Leave a comment. Let us know how it impacted you, and we'll see you next time. So how'd you get started in real estate?
Wow. How do we get started in real estate? So it was 2006. And at the time I was working for Verizon Wireless doing retail sales. And I was doing great, but I was finding like a real disconnect with what, just working in a corporate environment. If you've ever worked corporate sales, there's always like targets and quotas and what they call like KPIs. So it's all like measuring all of your performance based on their metrics. And it was like every handset we sold had to go with like a case and a charger and a Bluetooth headset, like just old school. So it was like early 2000s, like 03 to 06 ranges when I was there. And, even like they were measuring like how many like text messaging bundle plans we were like selling along with our like new customers. And it was fine. But after a while, I started to feel a massive disconnect between what they were holding us to and what people actually needed. So it was like, we're running like obviously like small community and we still like need all these things, but at the same time, we have like at the time even more like predominantly like retirement community. So we have like a lot of like grandmas coming in and they're like, hey, I need a phone for emergencies. And they're basically going to put it in their glove box in case their car breaks down. And, my manager like sits me down and they're kind of mad because I'm like selling tons of phones and tons of plans, but I'm not hitting the KPIs that they're wanting. And I'm like, well, what do you like? I feel like some of the things you guys are asking us for, there's a disconnect between what people really need. And we just kind of went round and around. And these kind of like, is what we're doing like really good for people? And I didn't want someone else to tell me that anymore. I just couldn't do it. And it was beyond that. It was like, we just had our first kid. And, if you're working retail, there's always like blackout hours or blackout time frames, like in the holidays. And just, I think that kind of entrepreneurial thing inside of me was just having a real difficult time with like, you have to show up on these days at this time or else, and it just like it was really demotivating for me. And I did great performance wise, but I just felt a real disconnect on like a moral kind of ethical level with what we were doing and couldn't really find a solution for that internally there. And so we had purchased a home already and we had kind of flipped that, didn't just kind of like bought it, remodeled it, we're living in it. And then we sold that, bought another house, put all the equity in the other one, did the same thing over again, kind of rinse and repeat. And we probably had at the time, probably like 90K in equity just because of what we had kind of been building on our own personal residence. And I really enjoyed, just the process of like what was happening in real estate. It was really exciting to me. And so that was kind of it. And so the avenue for me was like, I'm going to go be an agent, so that was like, I enjoyed really the investment side of it, but like, I didn't really know how to become like a full-time investor. So it was like, how do you become an agent? So I was really motivated. So I was like, all right, like we kind of made the decision and I was like, all right, I'm going to get my license. And I think it was about like the fastest time possible you can between like starting your courses and taking the test. Like that's what I did. I think it was like 90 days or something like that between like starting the licensing and finishing and taking the test in Sacramento. And I passed and like, I didn't even have like my license card in my hand and I gave my 2 weeks notice in. I was just so done. I was just so burnt out. And so, I mean, in hindsight, I'm like, okay, I probably should just drop down to like part-time, until like real estate sales like kicked in. So like not as much wisdom, but I was just so eager to get going. And I didn't really know what was happening historically in real estate. I didn't know that we were about to go into the Great Recession. I had no idea. I was just gung-ho, was super happy. And, I got into it and it was just like really hard because it was November 06. I got my license and the market literally like that time it did like this. And just for the next like 5 years that I was in it being an agent, it was just super, super hard. And my wife and I were like, man, like, I was like, what should I do? Like, should I just go back and get a job? Like, what should I do? Like this, because that first year, I think I had like 10 or 12 under contract and only like 2 houses closed. And like, it's not enough to make it, just because like crazy economic things were happening. Like we go into contract and people would lose their jobs. Like just everything was starting to like come apart at the seams economically. And I was like, man, this is really hard. Why is it so hard? And so my wife was like, hey, listen, she's like, if you can do it now, you'll be able to do it anytime. And so we just kind of like battened the hatches and just like hung in there, and just kind of like pulled through. Like I kept my real estate license and then I went back to Verizon just for 1 more year and kind of helped them with some small business sales. So it kind of gave me some extra time that I could use. And then all of a sudden I had like 5 or 6 houses under contract at once and they all closed and I just had another runway. So I was like, all right. And then I left and never had to go back again. So that's kind of like the beginning of real estate for me, for us, like in our journey. It was super wild. Like it was, and thankfully, like because of those houses that we had purchased and built equity in, we were able to take a HELOC on one of those to help us kind of navigate, like to give us like a runway coming off of Verizon, like into just full-time real estate sales. So that was kind of a cool thing to have,
What did you do with the
give
HELOC?
us that chance?
What did you do with the HELOC? Did you buy more or was that just like to live off?
No, that was just to live. Like that was just to live to give us the runway until I could have closing, which kind of like never really materialized in that first year, But yeah, so that's kind of how we use that.
Wow. So I mean, your journey start was like sink or swim. It's like
Basically, yeah.
you had to make it to survive, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah, it was like getting thrown in the deep end of the pool, you know? So,
Yeah. I in '08, I was actually building houses in North Carolina, working for a builder.
okay.
I was a project manager, pretty fresh out of college. I was probably 24 or so. And we're building these neighborhoods, production homes, essentially.
Wow,
and,
just like subdivisions, like single family subdivisions?
Single family townhouses. And I remember when I applied for that job, interviewed, I remember talking to the VP of construction. I told him, I was like, I would love to own a house one day. And he was like, well, we'd love to help you with that. And so I remember while working there, I was like, hey, remember you told me you'd help me? And they ended up giving me a discount. I bought a townhouse, one that actually was in the neighborhood I was working in. So it was like, I'd wake up and literally drive like down the street to the office, and it's pretty cool. And then I got laid off, I think like the second day of 2008, and had a mortgage and all this stuff. And it was intense. I remember building these houses, and you could just tell the stress level on the leadership was just so high. They would get triggered so easy, and it was super intense. And then luckily I got unemployment for a while, and that paid for my mortgage. And then I started, painting houses and doing like side hustles to get by, essentially. Because, if I got a job, I'd lose my unemployment. So I was like, I want to keep the unemployment, but also do some stuff under the table. And so it was like the blessing.
Like every person like during COVID, that was like laid off and getting PPP. You're like, I'm going to try and get the best of both worlds.
Pretty much. Yeah. But that was like what I needed to like jump into, entrepreneurship and creating your own thing. So it's like, it's funny how those hard times are actually what makes you better. Right. And I'm curious 100%. For you, like looking back on those 5 years, I mean, what do you think your big takeaways were in that season? And also, how's that prepared you for this current kind of, I wouldn't say recession. Some people might say a dip. I mean, what would you call it? I mean, where do you think we're at right now in the real estate market?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely it's hard because like a lot of like where we're at in the real estate market, it's always relative to where we just were like recently, right? So it's like 04, 05 was this massive like boom, and then like 06 on down to basically 2011 was just this massive drop. So I think we're always kind of measuring based on the season that we were last in. So it's hard because, we look at the COVID season. I remember like as soon as COVID hit and they were telling realtors that we couldn't even like show houses. Like you can't show houses, you can't go to like inspections. So like I heard that news, and it's, dude, like when you're building something, like there's a lot of inertia and a momentum and obviously a risk that we've kind of put out there with like ad spend and just like everything that you have out there. And then it just feels like a rug pull, like in those moments where it's just like, wait, what? Like some sort of like outside source is like kind of like controlling your life in a sense, or not controlling, but influencing what's happening. Right. And so I felt like super scared, like in that moment. I was like, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen? And just sort of like praying through it, like, God, like, what are we going to do? And then all of a sudden, like, it was just the complete opposite. It was just gangbusters for like, that season, those first like couple of years. Like all on real estate, like I'll average like, I don't know, 25 homes a year on average, just personal production, not like brokerage production. And, I think during that season I had like 42 houses a year. So it was just like wild, like really just like fruitful season, So I think when you compare that to where we are now, I think things have massively slowed down. So I've definitely seen a few things. Like I think I've seen price points seem to have gone up as far as like production. So people that we're working with, they're working a lot higher price points because they're not as affected by interest rates, and I feel that there's a lot higher percentage of cash sales, like cash purchases, at least like in my own production than I've seen in a long time. I see the stat from NAR that always comes through, and they're like, hey, like, I think it's like close to 30% of all purchases of homes are with cash.
Wow.
And to me, that's like a staggering amount. Like, that's just crazy. And just to there's so many stats that are like staggering to me, like 45, I think it's like, what is it? It's slipped my mind right now, but yeah. Anyways, as far as to answer your question, I think that, it's definitely slowed down, but we've just seen like higher price points and buyers are less affected by the interest rate environment. So for sure.
As far as the landscape you're saying now, what was it like, like you said, 06 to 11,
Yeah.
What was that like compared to it? As far as sales and what were you doing to get sales? What was that like?
Yeah. For me, I was like, just working with friends and family, building trust, pretty much like probably 95% buyer's agent. I may have had occasional listings, but it was just, working with people and helping them find the right house. And I think what was cool, coming from Verizon, where it was like, hey, do this or else, regardless of if it's in someone's best interest, I really had the opportunity to just take my time with people, not try and force them into a house, just take our time, look at houses. And, it's not like something that's, really profitable when you're like, okay, we looked at almost 100 houses in a couple instances over 2 or 3 years, right? Buyers that just weren't ready yet, or we were just out there looking, but there were buyers that we saw almost 100 homes with over time. And that sounds kind of crazy. And it obviously wasn't the norm. Otherwise I wouldn't be in business, right? It's not really a profitable venture to do that. But what was cool is just to be able to, when you're building something on your own and you're an entrepreneur, you can do something strictly because you believe in it. And that's it. You're I'm doing what I believe in. I'm doing this because I feel like this is right. And we're trying to find the right house for this person. And hopefully it's, less than 100. Hopefully it's less, 10 to 20 would be awesome. But no matter what it takes, we're just going to hang in there and do what's in the interest of other people regardless. And it just felt good. And what was interesting is over that time, I got to build this group of people that really trusted me, right? I took time with them. I didn't force them into anything. They all felt great about their experience because they felt I didn't convince them to, buy a property. And I think that the perception of realtors sometimes is that's our job. We're supposed to convince someone to buy something. And I'm I feel it's more I'm here to guide people through the process and help them make a great decision. And honestly, when they find the right house, they know, all I'm doing is helping them realize that they know that this is the right house for them based on everything they've told me. Right. I'm not twisting anybody's arm to buy a property. And so I think what was really cool during the time is just being able to be patient with people. We had massive amounts of inventory, crazy amounts of listing inventory. You look at I think last year, as far as foreclosures go, there was 125,000 foreclosures or something, 150. It was really low nationally. And in 2008, there were 2 million homes that were foreclosed.
Wow.
And that's those kind of stats really bring perspective and they bring clarity. Because when people get scared and they get nervous, when interest rates started to go up post-COVID, they're oh my gosh, a crash is coming. And I'm guys, how is a crash coming if there's no waves? This wave of inventory is what brings pricing down, right? So if we don't have inventory, we don't have a crash, right? We're just talking basic economics. We're talking supply of houses and we're talking demand for houses. And so, post-COVID, interest rates go up, the supply comes down in line with demand. So demand is dropping and supply is also dropping at the same time. And honestly, demand was actually stronger than the supply drop. So we still saw, even though appreciation's been slowing, we've still seen appreciation, and there was that article floating around that's Redding's going to see the most appreciation out of any city, in the US, which is great for home sellers, right? But all the buyers are everyone's kind of hoping that they can have their moment to re-enter the market, but it's tough.
So you mentioned, because you're, one thing that I'm excited for you and people on this podcast is, you have such a recognizable name in our community. I feel you're just, you're a standout. You're definitely a standout. You're one of the people that stands above the rest. And you have a brokerage and you built a team.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that.
How did you build a team like that? How did you build a team? What makes your team stand out? What makes it different? And I think a lot of that is culture. What kind of culture have you created with your team?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because it doesn't always feel like really strategic necessarily, or like, oh yeah, this is all intentional. And like everybody who's here is because like I definitely want like that person to be here. I think what happens is when you are an entrepreneur and you're building something on your own that's unique, it becomes a reflection of you, like for better or for worse, right? It basically is just like this amplification of like all of like your strengths and your weaknesses, right? And so I think with Upward, I'm like kind of known to be really laid back, like just kind of like have a lot of peace. Like I'm not like super like anxious. I'm not super like dramatic. I'm not going to drive people as far as like, hey, like where are your sales? Because obviously like even looking back my history at Verizon, like that was the reason why I left. I was like, this is like incongruent with like what's valuable for the best interest of people. And so for me, like in drawing, high quality agents that we have on our team, like I'm really happy to have the people that we have here. I feel like there becomes like an alignment of values. And I think that kind of culture is what draws people in. We have like maybe occasional meetings, like as we need to, like coming up, we're going to be talking like next week about the changes with buyer agent commissions that are coming down and how that may affect us, which we're still trying to figure some of that out. It's kind of crazy news that's breaking, but we don't have like weekly meetings. We don't have like, Monday, like every morning at this time we're meeting, like, and that's really good for some teams. Like some teams like really need that. And that's like how they, do their best. But I'm not like that. And so I'm more of like, as a broker, I feel like it's my role to support them and to help them and to encourage them, as they need help, but they're running their own businesses, and we're just creating like structure and oversight and accountability. But ultimately it's, they're going to grow their businesses to whatever level they want to grow it, right? They don't need me to be like cracking a whip or something, like as far as like a metaphor goes. So I think that may be part of just how we've grown to the point that we're at. So
you're very laid back. You kind of let the team do their thing, like not micromanaging. You did bring up meeting about this whole lawsuit, buyer fees, what they pay, commissions. Can you tell us about it and what you know about that whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly still trying to catch up. Like I've been listening to a few podcasts on it and just trying to really make sure I can process what it means. I know that like some changes are coming up that we're going to have to implement in the summer with, not being allowed to post like commission, like what we're offering to a buyer's agent for commissions. So I'm basically just kind of going to change like our value proposition to buyers, and we're working with them and helping them understand, how we're getting paid. And I think there's going to be some definite like ripple effects that go through the housing market because of, what this ends up looking like. I don't think we'll really know like what's going to look like until the dust really settles, like 6 months in, 12 months in, what this really does to the housing market. But basically, obviously, this is really coming from the lawsuit that happened in the Midwest, where basically buyers and sellers felt like agents were colluding together. They were colluding basically because in price fixing with kind of saying what the commission was going to be to the buyer's agents, but it wasn't really public information. And so because of that, it basically kind of became this whole thing where, and the NAR lost their lawsuit, which is a huge bummer. And I think it's like what, 450 million, I think is what the number was in the class action lawsuit. So, and I think each person involved probably gets like $1,000 and the attorneys probably get like 30 or 40 mil,
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I'm like, who really benefits in this? And, is this really good for the end consumer? I think the one thing that will come out of this is at least people will understand like how realtors are getting paid.
Yeah.
Because honestly, it's a mystery. Like every time you meet with a new buyer, like they're like, so how does this work? Like, how are you getting paid? Like, am I paying you? And the typical pitch was like, oh no, like you're not paying me. Like I'm getting paid from like the seller who's paying the listing broker, and that listing broker is paying me, right? That's kind of the sequence of events and how that goes down. And so I don't know, like, I think the whole thing's kind of weird, to be honest. Like, I think it's kind of strange. It's become such a big ordeal. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the transparency is really, really good. And the things that I've seen, as far as realtors talk about this, because the whole idea of like a buyer having to pay an agent seems crazy to me, because buyers today are having a hard time with their down payment. So if they're having a hard time with their down payment, they're also having a hard time with their closing costs, which they're asking for credits. And then if you add on commission on top of that, I don't see how they're going to pay for that. So I think that's really interesting.
I don't either.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it seems like the whole commission thing has always been to benefit the seller. It's to sell their house. And I think so many people, it's funny hearing people say they don't need a realtor. I mean, there's times where I've sold properties without a realtor, but
sure, totally
I think about all the work that, realtors do, negotiating. There's oftentimes a lot of emotion in a deal between the buyer and the seller, and to have people that are shielding that so that you're not dealing with a seller directly or a buyer directly, dealing with emotion. It's a lot of money involved, a lot of money. And so having that intermediary is like, to me, it's like worth the 2 to 5%, 6%, whatever you pay to get it done. Because one, if they bring you a buyer and they're doing all the marketing for you and all that, it's like, to me, it's worth it, because it's giving you more of your time back. It's less stressful. So I don't know.
I feel like most people who approach real estate from a business perspective, like investors like yourself, I think that most investors, you don't see them trying to sell their own property, because they realize that's not really their job. Like, their job is to like source deals, find deals, underwrite the deals, like close on them, fix them, and then, get them back on the market. Like, they're focused on their job, and their job's already intense enough. They don't need to try and like do that. And I think until you've really done it a few times, it's hard to understand the value of what's being offered. Right. And like, real estate really is a service business. Like, this is a high level service business, and like, commissions are really expensive. And I could really see that, like, this will bring a lot to the table on kind of adding layers of negotiation into what's happening. Like, how are we going to get paid? Like, is the buyer going to front the money? Like, is the seller going to do it through a credit? Like, it gets a little bit murky, but I do think that like, what we're doing is really valuable, and it is a great service that we're offering. I mean, the truth is that like, if you wanted to go work on all of your own projects and swing a hammer and like build the framing and like drop on the, like, you could do all those things yourself. Like, how to do it, but you pay typically a GC to go do stuff, all that stuff. Right. And they hire subs. And so it's like, you could do those things, but because you're valuing your time and realizing how to scale your time, you hire people who are qualified to do it. And I think it's the same thing. It's like, you can DIY projects at your house, but they're never really going to look as good as when you hire a professional to do them. Like, I know personally, like, I, watched a bunch of YouTube videos and got doped up on a bunch of vlogs. And I was like, I'm going to do concrete countertops in my house. And it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. I was like, oh man, they made this sound so easy. And bro, there's so much science and chemistry and dropping like, even like pour in place like countertops, right? Like, and it was so bad. We had to tear them all out like 2 years later and pay someone to put quartz in, like, and all that money we thought we were saving just like went out the window. Yeah. So I feel like I'm using that as a metaphor for what people are perceiving agents do or don't do. And I think that, there's a lot of value to what we bring. And I think that it will definitely put, a lot of weight onto realtors to be able to communicate our value, like what we're bringing, for people who now feel like, oh, like, I don't know if I can pay that, Yeah. So I think that's going to be the hard part to see how it works out.
Right. Yeah. I like what you said. I think it's something that needs to get tested, flushed out, and see how the market, how this all is going to shake out. It's, like you said, we won't know for 6 months, 12 months or longer. But just to kind of, switch up things and talk a little bit more about your investing, you jumped into being an agent. I guess that led you to being a broker, to taking on more responsibility, more potential to make more money. How did that path lead you into investing? And, what's your journey with investing and where are you at right now with it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think from the start, it's been the investing part of the business has been the one part of the business that I've always been the most interested in. But it just felt like just out of reach, right? So we've had approximately, we've bought and sold, we're on our fourth personal residence, primary residence. So we've kind of been that bought, renovate, take the equity, put in the next one, do that again. And we're in our fourth home, and our fourth home has a guest house. And even at the time I was this was 2014. We got our current house, and we were living in a house that we bought for $170K. Real estate was still a little bit wonky. I was about to start my real estate brokerage, and I saw this house for $425,000 on 2.5 acres with 2,800 square feet, and it had an entire completed shop that already had a full bathroom and a kitchenette and an office in it. And I was if we take our equity from this house, buy this house, even though income wise, it doesn't really make sense because we were just in a really unstable place then. I was we can basically rent that out, and we're making the same mortgage payment we're making right now on this small at the time 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 1,600 square foot house. It was a great house, but it was starting to feel small for us with we had 4 kids. I was if we just do this, it'll be the same mortgage payment. And she was I don't know. And I just felt, what's hard, man, is I really felt the Lord on it. I just felt a sense of conviction. I felt a sense of faith. And I can say that for myself, as a realtor, I really steer away from telling people that I'm helping, that God is telling them to do something, because that gets really gross and really bad really fast. So I don't do that. But for myself, I know my relationship with God, I know my walk with the Lord. And I'm man, I just felt we're supposed to do this. And this doesn't make a lot of sense. And she was okay, I'm going to trust you. Because she's if we're homeless, you're totally going to own this. And I was okay, sweet. So then we went into contract on that thing. And I'll get to your question in a second, but it's I really want to share this story. But so we go into contract on this thing. We have to sell our house, and we can't sell it because it's the winter time. We can't sell our contingent house. And we went back to the seller, and I was I'm really sorry. We want your house so bad. I was but we can't sell our house and for what we need to get out of it. And she's well, how about I just buy your house that you're in right now for cash, and so that you can buy my house. Do you feel that?
No way.
She said, I'll just buy your house for cash and you can buy my house. And then in the spring, I'll either turn it into a rental or I'll just flip it. And we were just the Lord has just answered our prayers. And so, it was just crazy journey, but that was where we're at now. And to answer your question, I think that real estate investing has been the thing I've been the most excited about. I just wanted to get there. But I felt in order to get there, I guess I need to be a realtor. And everybody chooses different, I think, paths or ways to get to real estate investing. But for me, that was just the most logical journey as far as the next step. And so becoming an agent, and then eventually becoming a broker. And it's taken me a lot longer, if I'm being honest, than I really wish it would have, to get to this point where real estate investing is becoming, a little bit more consistent. Right. But I think sometimes you got to put in the reps, sometimes you just can't take a shortcut to get there. And I think we're living under this delusion, living in a world that's highly influenced by what people post on social media. And most of the time there's not a lot of legitimacy to what they're posting or how easy they're making it look. Right. And I even remember early days of real estate, wanting to get into the investing piece and looking at all the house flipping shows. I mean, they're still prevalent, right? But just they make it seem so easy. and there's just so much more to it. And I think that I'm in a place right now that I feel really good about. I feel like when we make decisions about investments, we can do it with a lot of confidence because I've put in the reps. Like I worked with, I don't know, like several hundred different buyers over almost 18 years. And I know what buyers want in a house. I know like what the buyer mindset is, like, because I've like looked at all these houses with these people and I walked through this process with them. Right. So a lot of times I think we want the easy route, but I think that sometimes you just have to put in the work. And, and right now when I look at a house, it feels really easy to make a quick decision on if it's a good value or not.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think the metaphor that I really like is the way that they teach bank tellers, like how to tell a counterfeit, is they let them like hold like real dollars. And they're like constantly like counting like real money. And then when they feel a counterfeit, they can tell. And I use that kind of as a metaphor for what I feel like I've been going through in real estate, even though it's taking a lot longer than I wish. But like, I feel like that's what I've been doing is like, I've been going through like what it really should feel like. And so, a couple of years back when this house in Olive popped up in the market on the MLS, for 175K and had one picture on the MLS. And it was like, hey, there's no showings, but you have to like submit an offer subject to inspections. Like it took me like maybe 5 minutes. And I was like on my computer drafting an offer and sending it and telling my wife like, hey, I just sent an offer. It was just like spontaneous. Like I probably should have like talked to you first. I'm really sorry. But like, I had to get it out. And they accepted it like really quickly. And I think sometimes it's just the thing that helps you with real estate is speed, like being prepared to jump on these things when they come. Like I missed out on one yesterday. Like we were just driving by. I don't know if you saw that one on Mountain View for like 200K, but like it went super quick and we were about to write an offer. So I'm just saying like, I think that being quick matters and being prepared matters. And, sometimes you have to look at a lot of houses that you pass on before you decide, or investments, right? That you pass on. And I don't know if you've, experiencing something similar as far as, your journey goes, but that's kind of where I've been. So,
man, you're seeing a lot of good stuff, really good stuff right there. I'm just getting slapped with the nuggets, but just like you said, reps, like the more properties you look at, the more confidence you have with to make offers. And I just think about all the great deals I've gotten, and it's been speed. It's been making quick offers, acting quick, not knowing everything. It's like I have a mentorship, and I'm talking to my students, and I think as a new home buyer or an investor, you almost want to make sure everything is perfect and ready before you make an offer, versus the seasoned person knows. Get an offer, get it tied up, and then investigate and figure it out. Right. Yep. So it was fun. I've been coaching someone who just made an offer on a property that I was like, this could be a hot deal. It's one of the few properties that I see that actually pencil out as a house hack. It's 2 homes. Yeah. And
that's sweet.
So it sounds like a lot of your journey has been with investing has been more of like the live in flip. I'm guessing you buy something, you fix it up, you live in it for 2 out of 5 years, and you sell it with no capital gains tax. And then you take that profit and put it into your next property. And you do that multiple times.
That's what most of it. Yeah.
And then now are you house hacking right now? You're renting out part of your property for income?
Yeah. Yeah. So we're still doing that, and we rent out with that guest house in our property, and we rent that out and pays for like, over half our mortgage. And it's just been amazing. It's been a godsend, like ever since we've done it. And I think initially, like I really wanted to do Airbnb or some sort of like, short-term, mid-term solution there just so we would make more money. But we chose to really have tenants there just because that's where our family is. And we want to feel comfortable with who's on our property, and, they're around our kids, and there's just, that kind of thing that you have to navigate and be careful about. But so we have that going. And then we had Olive, that property they mentioned that made the offer on quickly. We just sold that. So we closed a little over a week ago on that one. So that felt like a really good win.
So that property, 3 units, was it 3 units when you bought it?
Yeah.
Okay. So you Tell me about that process. How did you buy it? What did you do to the property? And then how did you sell it?
I mean, I think it was 2021. I really felt like, man, I really need to find like an investment. And so I joined like a coaching group, like for investors, and was just like really putting in the work, like making sure I was vigilant about like looking for deals. And I think that's probably the thing I'm honestly still trying to figure out is how to consistently source like deals for either, buy and holds or flips or whatever. Like that's still like a struggle. So I'm definitely leaning into that more and more and trying to find solutions. But so that one, I've been looking that year, and then it was like September. I saw that one just come online. Like I'm looking at the MLS like multiple times a day just because you want to be first. You want to see the deal first and be able to underwrite it first. And so I looked in the afternoon and wrote an offer. I mean, it was within like a few minutes of seeing it, because it came on the market as a triplex on Olive Street, which is in a great area. It's in the Magnolia district. It's, high demand. Like part of the thesis for what I wanted to do was to have something that was basically 5 minutes to both hospitals and the courthouse. And so I think the Garden Tract fits that. Magnolia district fits that. And so I think that that's part of what helps too, is like when you're looking for something, you don't want to just be like open to everything. Like you have to have a buy box. You have to have like some sort of like parameter, like this is what I want. And so that way, when it does does show up like on your radar, like you can pull the trigger. Like it doesn't take a lot of time because you've already decided that, right? And I think that's something too that I just learned working with like, tons of buyers is that it's this process of elimination. It's like, all right, we already know like everything we want about the house. We just need it to show up in the market. And so this one showed up on the market for 175 with one picture. And we just wrote on it sight unseen and got into contract on it. And it needed a ton
full price.
more work.
What was your offer? What was your offer on it?
So they asked 175 and I was like, fine, like have 175, like here, like just because I didn't want them to question it. I didn't want like them to wait it out.
Yeah.
And like, I think that sometimes, and this kind of goes back to our like discussion about realtor commissions. Like sometimes the agent can be a weakness for the seller, and sometimes they can be an asset.
Yeah.
And, this agent had actually been managing the property for these people for a while. Super nice person, but he really kind of felt like he knew about all the deferred maintenance, and he just didn't have like a strong value perspective on what it should go for. And so I think his sellers wanted to be done with it. And I think he kind of wanted to be done with it too, to be honest. And so it came on at 175. And like my personal perspective is that he probably should have advised his clients to wait a week. Like, don't take whatever comes. Like, let's wait for multiples, And they just took my offer like the first evening. So we went to contract. It probably had like 15K of like section 1, section 2 termite, dry rot issues. It just tons of deferred maintenance, dude. I mean, I'm sure you've seen way worse properties than this one, but it need a lot of work. And we did a sewer scope, and like the plumber guy was like, I don't even know how like the sewage is making it to like the city line. He's like, there's so many like parts of it that are broken. Like, he's like, it's just miraculous. It's even like not clogged already. And so we knew going into it that there'd be like another 11,000 at least to get our plumbing line fixed from the houses all the way to the street. Come to find out, it was like, 25K at a minimum. I had bids that went up to like 60K because they were like, oh, we're going to have to dig up the street and like stop traffic. And we ended up going this solution called New Flow for plumbing, which was pretty cool. Because they basically kind of build it from the inside out.
They do like a liner.
It like expands. It was amazing. It's like a brilliant solution and it saved us some money. But so we had that leverage, and I just went back to the sellers during our inspection period and said, hey, listen, a lot of this is unforeseen. I could have had no idea it would be this bad. If you drop it from 175 to 150, we'll just move forward and not have you do any work. And they just said yes, which was like, to me, like, as an agent, like I know that they should have like probably countered that. Right. And I probably still would have taken it. But, again, this is kind of the value. You have to know like that you're working with an experienced agent who can guide you through like the right things to do in those kind of situations. And, it ended up, so we got it for 150. We did hard money. So that was super fun. It's like, like 20% down and like, I don't know, like a bunch of points and 11% interest only on the hard money for the purchase. Plus like they gave us 100K in renovations, but we were paying on the full amount from day one. So, and obviously relative to some of the scale projects that you're looking at, like very small, right? But it was just like, okay, so that's like a $2,100 payment every month, no matter what. So then we had to like, once we closed, we asked the tenants to all leave, and they were all like, they nicely left. We gave them cash for keys just to kind of expedite the process. And then we started renovation. It took us 8 months. Took us, we thought it was going to be 100K. It was 165K to finish them out. So, and it was funny is like going into it, I was like, oh, like as an entrepreneur, you're constantly like lying to yourself about what things will be because you want it to work. Yep. And like, you're the most dishonest, I think, with yourself in those moments. Right. And so having people in your life that can like help you navigate that and kind of help you see past the lie. I don't know if that, does that make sense to you? Like you're just like, oh yeah, it's only going to be this because if it's not this, then I can't make it work. And so you just lie to yourself in order to get yourself into it. Like,
I don't know if you're lying to yourself. I think that entrepreneurs are optimists. I think that's what gets, if we weren't optimists, then we wouldn't get things done. We wouldn't take risk. And so, I mean, your story,
but I'm like, is like when it's like you believe in the optimism to the point where it's like delusion, right? Where it's like not even real. Like, so I think there's a line somewhere.
Or being naive, not knowing, like, I'm sure you experience this. Every project, two things are going to happen. It's going to cost more and it's going to take longer. Every project that is going to happen. So you just don't know what you don't know. But like that deal, I mean, think about all the things that would have deterred other buyers. The fact that all that work you would have to do, sewer lines, pest work, getting tenants out. I mean, so many people were like, I'll run from that. And it's California. Like, how are you going to do that? So, I mean, it's just, I mean, the fact that you're willing to say, I'm going to take on these risks, most buyers will be like, I'll pass on that. So,
and I think it's easy too, because I think you tend to minimize that things are going to be hard and you just kind of embrace them as they come, and I think what's interesting is they talk about, income properties, like there's passive income. And I just feel like that's like not even close to true. I wish there was another word for it.
What do you mean?
There's just so much work that goes into it. I mean, even with like, the conversations with tenants, like they knew that we were buying the property, right? But even just like, being brave enough to make the phone calls directly to tenants and just say, hey, I know that you've been here for a long time, like, and this is a place that you call home, but we have plans to renovate the entire property and it's not possible for you to stay. So we're asking that you move out. Like, and two of the people were kind of relieved, like that you could tell they kind of already wanted to go, two of the tenants. But I kid you not, like one of them that I was talking to, he was like, he actually like started crying like when I was on the phone with him. And he was like, this is the only place that's been willing to take me because of like my past and because of things I've been through and decisions I made. And he's like, if we can't live here, then, like I'm probably going to be homeless. Wow. And then like he started crying when I was on the phone with him and he said, I got to go. And he hung up. And that was hard. Like that really sucked. Like that's a gut punch. Like that doesn't feel good. Right. But, he ended up finding another place, like he ended up like being okay. And, I was like, hey, I want to help you like however I can, like however I can help you get to the next place, like let me know, like whatever I can do to help, but they don't talk about moments like that on HGTV. Like they don't talk about moments like that, like on Instagram, right? Because it's not sexy. It's like, those are like very hard things like that you walk through, and I'm sure like that conversation, like, even those difficult conversations, nothing compared to some things that other people who flip properties have been through. Right. So, but there are a lot of hurdles that we go through for sure that are really difficult. And you just kind of pray for wisdom and pray to be able to treat people rightly as you're, navigating these situations. But It's pretty tough.
It is tough. And I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that. The whole idea of like gentrification, making the city better. There's some people that are like totally against it. They think that you shouldn't fix up properties. You should let tenants stay there, paying lower rent versus like, doing what you did, essentially elevating that neighborhood, making the property nicer. I mean, how do you reconcile that? What do you, after that experience, did that make it to where you didn't want to do that again? Or are you like, hey, this is good. You feel like it's a good thing to do. I'm just wondering how did you process that after the fact?
I think that perception isn't always reality. I think that people perceive, I guess like gentrification in a negative light, and I can see like drawbacks to it, like on a large scale. I think two of the like concrete examples that come to mind where I'm like, oh, I would totally do this again is the neighbors. Like when we were there for 8 months, like day in and day out, making the property better, all the neighbors who walked the street like would come up to us and personally thank us because they were excited because the property had deferred maintenance and it had become an eyesore and it was affecting the neighborhood in a negative way, right? So, maybe people from the outside in who aren't in that neighborhood don't appreciate it. But I know that the people who were there, they do. And I also know that when we went to lease these properties, we had tons of interest and we had lots of tenants who were there who really appreciated living there, even though our rents were higher than like average market prices. So we were getting $1,250 for our 1-1s and we were getting $1,450 for our 2-1. And even when I listed it, the appraiser was like, he owned some properties in the neighborhood. He was like, hey, he's like, these prices that you have on the MLS, like, is that real? He was like, you're really getting like that much in rent? He's like, because we have like others in the area that rentals, and he's like, we don't get near that. And I was like, yeah, like they're definitely real. And one of the things that's interesting, even just looking at value, is like you do have to put in the reps, like the unfun work. Like the moment that we like owned it and we were going through 8 months worth of like renovations, like almost like every day I was looking on like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace to understand the rental market because I wanted to know what felt good on pricing. And the truth is there's just not that many rentals that are in good shape. And there is an entire market of people who really want that and who really appreciate it and are willing to pay for it. So
that's good, man. That's really good. It's the product, right? The product sells itself, essentially.
It does, totally.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I feel like I've had similar feedback from stuff I've done where it's like, this is the ugliest, worst house on the street, and you have neighbors singing your praise and thanking you, and solving those problems and creating a home for somebody is a blessing. And yeah, I think a lot of people don't, as far as renters or people that don't invest or have never owned a business, they don't realize the expenses, the costs that go into these things, and they think, oh, well, you're just collecting money. And they don't realize that you have taxes, you have insurance, you have repairs and maintenance. You have all these things that have ongoing costs. And not only that, they're getting more expensive every year. So it's not like it's getting cheaper to own a rental. It's actually getting more expensive to maintain.
It's so bad.
Right. And if you're a good landlord, you want to maintain your property. If something breaks, you fix it. You have these slumlords out there that they haven't raised their rent in 10, 20 years. They haven't fixed anything. Yeah. And so that actually hurts the whole market. It makes it more challenging for other people. And it hurts the realtor or the renters because they have no sense of reality of what value is. And so there's almost like entitlement too, where it's like, well, I'm entitled to this. Well, it's that whole struggle in California with renting, ownership, what is entitled to renters. And it's confusing.
Like what are their rights?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and then you take that to the other extreme where like, in places like, gosh, where was that recently? In Oregon or New York, where there was a squatter who literally like just took over a property and just would not move. So it's like, and that's, common. And I think that we've taken it too far. I think that like, obviously, when there is like, like power loss. So it's like, if someone has like all the properties and, they have all this power, like as a landlord, and they're controlling all the units. I could see where it's like people would feel taken advantage of if the properties, if the condition of the properties didn't match what was being paid for. Right. Yeah. And I think that that's where the disconnect is. And that's why people have tried to fight for tenant rights, is because in a lot of situations, there are a lot of cases where landlords are charging too much and they're not offering a good product and they're not offering a good service. Because what's interesting about like renting is it's both a product and a service. Like your responsiveness to tenants, like how you care about like the maintenance issues that are going on there. Like your responsiveness to those things matters, and it makes tenants to want to stay there if you're doing a good job, and it makes them want to continue to pay if you are. For the tenants that have been in our properties, and obviously we've only had 3, so that's not like this massive landlord, but in our small example, like our tenants have been really excited to be there. And when we were selling a property, they were kind of nervous. They're like, is the new like owner going to want us to stay? So for me, like that's an indicator that we're doing something right. And people are like, not like, hey, how can I get out of here? They're like, hey, like, how can I stay longer? It feels like you're charging the right amount of money and you're offering the right level of product and the right level of service to those people. So,
yeah, that's good. Are you managing it yourself, or did you have a?
Yeah, I was self-managing because I just felt like, right when we went to market, I was like, I mean, number one, it's only 3, right? So it's not like, I think beyond 10, 20, like I think there's certain like diminishing returns to self-management. Yeah. So I think there's definitely a level of that. And I think you've seen that and experienced that. But for us, it was like, I don't think anybody's going to care as much about how good the marketing should look and about the quality of tenants as I will, like no one's going to care like I will right now, because it was like, dude, we had like, like I said, we had 100K to use and we used 165. And like, I had to come up with the 65, right? So like we had pushed this thing like to the brink, like exhausting savings right before we did a cash out refi to kind of like reinstate some of that overage that we did.
Yeah, how did that work out? Were you able to pay back your lender in full and everything?
Yeah. Praise God, man. I mean, it was definitely stressful, but like we were able to, pay back our hard money lender. And then we actually were able to get like a private money loan for the cash out refi. And then we gave them, it was like 8% on 315,000 for like a year and a half, until we just sold it. So, and that person is stoked. Like our lender, our private lender is stoked. Like they love us. And they're asking like when our next project is going to be, it's a great experience for them. So
nice. Do you have plans to do more flips or buy and holds with hard money?
Yes. Like definite plans, definitely like leaning in really hard. Like I said, we just missed a property yesterday, but we did great on the sale, and we want to take, a little bit of that to do some projects around our house that we've been wanting to do for years, because it was, a bit of a home run for us personally. And we're going to take the rest and just reinvest it. So, leaning in towards like trying to find off market sellers and, stay on top of the MLS and whatever deals I can find, so we'd love to. Get some more going for sure.
Yeah. So what is your buy box looking like right now? I mean, you've mentioned neighborhoods. If you're in Reading, like Magnolia, Garden Track is surrounding downtown. Are those buy boxes the same, or are you shifting that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny that I would say that, because now I feel a bit hypocritical, because I'm like, there's so few options. Right. And so I think there's like my ideal, which is, whenever it's hard to communicate to people who are just starting too, because I think that there's a lot of things when you're underwriting something, there's a lot of things that are happening as you look at it that are very subconscious, right? Because you've done these reps. And so, like, okay, like what neighborhood is it? How close is it to certain churches? Like how close is it to downtown? Like, does it have a good feel? Like, is it safe? Like, so there's definite areas, that I could be like, well, I don't want to be there. Like, I really don't want to be like, real south, like Southwest Red. There's just certain areas I don't want to be like in Parkview, like, so there's definite areas where like I really like Northeast Reading. I really like, obviously where I've been, Garden Tract, Magnolia. I really like those areas. If I can find anything there, whether single family or multifamily, like I'm excited about it, So
Nice. Are you underwriting your deals yourself, or do you have a team that helps you with that?
Yeah, it's just me.
I
Do
love
you have
it.
a team? Do you have like a whole bunch of crew? How are you finding your deals?
I mean, I was for a minute, for a hot second. Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say most of it's been me. I've been underwriting everything, making offers. And then I joined a mastermind. I joined CG, Collective Genius. And these guys are doing hundreds of deals. They're wholesaling. They're just getting after it. And so my progression with hiring has been, hiring full-time construction guys to hiring an assistant, and then that assistant becoming a project manager. And then she starts taking on too much work. And then I hire a COO, basically an integrator. So I'm the visionary. He's the integrator doing all the operations. And then I hired another project manager. So I have all that. When I hired Andrew to do operations, we started trying to build out, an off-market funnel where, I was doing before him. I mean, I had an assistant. We were doing driving for dollars, sending letters. And then we started.
So hard, dude. It's piecemeal. You're just like, how do I make this consistent? Like, that's my struggle, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to create a system. And I mean, my first batch of letters went out like right before Christmas. Not a good time, but hungry, trying to get it done. I got some callbacks, but I never got a deal from that. I think all the off-market deals I've ever gotten was from reputation, like from my name, from people like other realtors knowing what I do. And I think the main reason for that has been social media. They see like, oh, wow, like he flips houses, he's doing renovations, he's doing this, putting it out there to the world. And so it's coming back to me from realtors seeing it. So I think that's been the biggest like deal flow for me. And so, as I realized that it didn't really work, and I was having, I trained Andrew how to analyze deals. I created this spreadsheet that was awesome. We have probably 200 deals that we've analyzed. And I was like, okay, it's a numbers game now. I was like, we need to offer, we need to analyze 5 deals a day. We need to, make 10 offers a week, whatever it is. And we were doing that. And I felt like in some ways we're kind of striving. I felt like it wasn't working. It could have been the timing. Maybe it's one of those things, like you said, it's about reps. But at the same time, I was like, you know what? This doesn't seem to be working that well. And so I didn't give up on it because it wasn't working. I more so put a pause on it because the focus shifted to bigger projects. So, okay, cool. We're buying Cave Springs. That's a big project, man. Yeah, it's a bigger project, more focus. And we did a couple other deals like around that time that were smaller. But the focus shifted, right? And I think that's what it did. So, yeah. But to move it back,
Springs going. Sorry.
No, you're good. Cave Springs going great. Yeah, it's been an amazing project. I mean, I've learned so much. Like I'm on another level of just stress, challenge, problem solving, financial, everything has just been new and different and learned a ton. But yeah, I mean, as far as like operating it, it's awesome. We've got almost 60 units, 60 doors, and we bought it.
Oh my gosh.
When we bought it, I mean, there was really only maybe 27 short-term rentals there. So we've taken, we went from about 27, to 60. And there was a mobile home park where 10 of the mobile homes were owned by owners. And so we had to buy those. And that was an incredible challenge because they have so much rights. It's not like a tenant. They own their mobile. We lease the land to them. And some of them are like mega millionaires. They don't need money. Like one guy, we're negotiating. He goes,
they're living in these like mobile homes and they have like, I mean, they're set though. I mean, they're just
no, these were second homes. No, these were second homes. And, one guy was like, sorry, I don't have time to negotiate with you right now. I'm going to space. I'm going to outer space. Yeah. He's like, I'm going to outer space next week. I can't negotiate with you right now. He's worth like hundreds of millions. He has high rises in San Francisco, and I'm trying to buy a trailer from him for like $40,000. He's like, yeah, I don't have time for that. I'm going to space. Another lady was like a mega millionaire, and she was like in her 90s. So anyways, we were able to buy them all back. We bought them, and now everything is completely owned by Cave Springs. And, we have 100-year-old cabins that are just people from multi-generations, 4 generations have been coming to this place and having a great time. Wow. And it means a lot to, man. Yeah, it means a lot to people. And I had no idea when I bought it. I had no idea the significance of this place to people. And it's been cool to see that and how much people care about it and love it. And I feel very thankful.
With some of these things too, that like were owned by kind of mom and pops, like just for 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
But they were never like really like push the envelope of what they were really worth on the market, which meant that they didn't have the money to do all the maintenance the way it should have been done. There was never any renovations. So it's just kind of dilapidated. I think there's a ton of those out there. You know?
Oh man, it's the biggest opportunity that I see. And it's same with businesses. It's the old baby boomers retiring and, they're actually shutting down. They're not even trying to sell them. It's crazy. You see this in businesses, but also in those like RV, mobile home parks, campgrounds. Like you said, they've owned it for 40, 50 years and they want to get out and they haven't done any maintenance. And so that's how Cave Springs was. Wow. And no one wanted to touch it because they're like, dude, this is so much work. And honestly, man, I'm so glad we took it on. It's been
Did you really refi out of like whatever your like acquisition financing was, or are you still like in process? Like where are you at like in the timeline?
Yeah, I'm in the process right now. We've already had it appraised. So we had the appraised. I thought like, oh man, if the value comes in, we're done. But actually not really, because lending on something like this, people
like commercial, right?
Well, commercial or even hard money, even doing another bridge loan, they want to go over 50, 60% loan to value. I mean, it's tough.
What?
Yeah, it's tough. And so I've been trying to, get an SBA loan. I've been trying to do an SBA refinance. They won't do an SBA refinance until you've owned it and operated it for 2 years. So, and that's running business. So it's not from when I bought it. It counts because we bought it in like November 2022, but then we reopened in May of 23. So they don't count that until May of 23. So, I mean, we show really good financials. You
still have another year.
They want to see 2 years of it. So it's looking like, like my appraisal, you look at it and you're like, dude, you should be able to pay back your lender. But it's looking like I probably won't pay back my lender in full. So I'll probably pay them back as much as I can in a month. And then after we can show this income, either later in this year, I would do refinance into a conventional, or next year I'll do an SBA refinance loan, or maybe I sell it. I doubt it, but I am trying to build it to sell, even if I want to sell it or not. It's just to build it with that mindset of getting all your books in order and make it sellable to the right buyer, right? Regardless if I want to sell it. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Super important.
But knowing what I know now, like if you're underwriting a hotel or something and you want to do a BRRRR and you want to refinance it out of a hard money deal, I would project, 50, 60% LTV for a loan. If it's more of a quick
BRRRR,
No, it's tough, or it's tough because you would have to carry a hard money loan for over 2 years, and most hard money lenders want to turn their money. No, it's not cheap, and they want to turn their money over quickly. So you might have to do like a couple refinances to make it work, or you just got to find a screaming deal. And you have to put in more of your own money to make it work. I think that's what I'm seeing is you have to put more money into it. It's tough.
That's super crazy. Cause I mean, obviously it's so different than residential, right? Cause like you can BRRRR out at like, I know 70%, 80% LTV, maybe sometimes a little higher, but like, I mean, 50% is tough because a lot of people almost like buy at 50%, right? Before they do renovations and stuff. So like having to buy like that deep, and then plus renovations, like that sounds like a massive challenge.
Yeah. I mean, that's honestly the only deals I'm seeing that really pencil are things like this. It's boutique hotels, really interesting properties that you can get a good deal on. And it's got to be commercial because that's how you push the income. That's how you create value. And it's all based on your NOI, your net operating income. And so if you can increase your income, that's how you increase the value of the property. So that's why I'm like steering more to that path versus like residential. Residential's tough, meaning anything below 5 units. It's just you're only tied into what sales comps, and that can be tough. And market rent, and that's tough when you're pushing market rents like we are. Your appraisal won't give you market rent. So say, oh yeah, you're getting, let's say $2,000 a month for a 2-bedroom, and they'd be like, no, market rent's only $1,200, and so it hurts your value. And I've been hurt.
Doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make sense at all. It's tough. I got an appraisal done on a property, and the appraisal came in $200,000 below what I was selling it for. I mean, it almost killed the deal. Luckily, the buyer was willing to come up $100,000, but I'm like, dude, you almost killed my deal. I mean, surely that shows if someone's willing to pay for it, then that should be the value.
And I think that's like the crux is that if they're not willing to pay for it in cash, then like are they really willing to pay for it, right? So it's like, because the true market, the true market for anything is like the cash market, right? So like, I mean, even when I look at like multiple offer scenarios and willing to pay cash, like I'm like, okay, that's like the true market. And it just gets hard and debatable because like anything that's financed, like basically causes an inflation in pricing within that segment of whatever that thing is. Like, you look at what's happening in the car market, just as an example, the car market's come way down. It's just like spiraling right now because financing is so hard with what the Fed's doing with interest rates.
Prices are
it's very volatile. So you figure 30% of the market's cash, in residential real estate. So you figure that other 70% of the market is the volatile piece, right? And then the even more volatile piece is the people with small down payments who are financing 96.5% of their purchase. That's probably the most volatile piece. And that was making up so much of our market. And now that's just like evaporated, So
what do you think about, short answer, what do you think about debt?
What do I think about debt? I mean, I believe in it. I believe in using it as leverage to make smart investments. It's terrible for like your personal things that you want to enjoy that you can afford to pay for in cash, but I think it's incredible for those other things. I heard some statements by like Ramsey where like on a podcast where he was like, they were like, okay, if someone said that they would lend you $1 billion at 0%, would you borrow that $1 billion? And he said no.
Ramsey said no?
He said no. Because of all people to ask, of course he's going to say no, right?
Yeah.
But
he owns like $600 million in real estate, right? His net worth or something crazy is beyond that.
I don't know.
Sure.
He's doing great, right? He's doing amazing. But yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question about debt, but I think it can be really great. I think a lot of people get into trouble with debt, because once you get into that like debt spiral, like you just can't get out,
right?
If you're using it for the wrong reason. So you just be careful.
Right. So you believe in it. It's more for buying assets. If it makes you money, then it's a good debt. If it is a liability where it takes money from you,
then we're going to argue like, is like your personal residence an asset, right? Because pretty much everybody who's like, I've heard of a lot of investors argue that your personal residence is not an asset.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I guess I can see both ways on that one. I definitely feel like it's, great to use it on investment properties that you don't own for sure. So,
it's different.
I've experienced the benefits of using debt personally, right? Like we've borrowed money to do all of our purchase and renovations on all of our personal residences. And it's been amazing for us. So.
Well, house hacking, you're definitely making an asset. You're making money from it.
That's true.
And it's paying your mortgage. Let's say you're Grant Cardone and you want to buy a beachfront property on Malibu. Is that an asset? Well, someone might think it is.
No.
Well, someone might say no, right? Like it's not an
Well, I've heard
asset.
Grant say that it is not.
Well, I want to argue that because to me, there's only so
I
much
know.
coastline, right? There's only so much of that land available. So there's scarcity. So it's a good investment.
Right.
So if you hold
Right.
it for 30 years, it will triple, quadruple in value. Is that an asset? Maybe not.
It performs like an asset, over time, right? So, that's kind of the ultimate goal is you buy an asset and then like it holds its value while inflation decreases the dollar over time. That thing holds its value. So technically it's going up. But
Or let's say a vehicle. I bought a Sprinter van a couple years ago and brought a brand new one, and I wrote it off. I saved $30,000 in income taxes that year. And then, I drive it around, I load it up, my cabinets, and I take it to projects. I take it surfing, it's fun. But I pay, I was paying maybe $1,000 a month. Some people might say it's a liability, or it's just the cost of doing business. And then I ended up selling it for almost the same amount that I paid for it. So I'm like,
well, the timing is everything, right? Like buy it like pre-COVID before like supply dries up on like the entire car market.
Yeah.
And then demand goes up because of interest rates. And all of a sudden you have something that's in high demand and there's low supply of that thing. Of course, like it's kind of a brilliant decision. I just think we probably need a better description of it. Something that's like, it performs like an asset, but we can't call it that, like there's gotta be some sort of like middle ground. So
I think that's the beauty of owning your own business is like all the cool stuff that comes with it, right? Having write-offs and being able to buy stuff like a vehicle or clothes or whatever you need.
Humongous tax advantages. And there's lots of people who own real estate, not for the sake of appreciation or cash flow. They literally own it for this purpose of depreciation, like being able to write off their income taxes. It's
right.
Like
that's, you're that wealthy and that's your problem. To solve. That's
I'm hoping
awesome.
to have that problem someday,
But, I want to respect your time. We'll kind of wrap things up. I have a few final questions. One is, what does the future look like for you with real estate? What are your 5-10-year goals look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not a great goal guy. I think I like a lot of like being entrepreneurial. I think you always have like visions of like what you want your life to be in the future. I think I would love to be more and more involved with, the investment side of the business while we continue to grow the brokerage, empowering other agents to do really well at what they're doing. And, I've got some other like local heroes that have kind of done the same thing, just kind of like built brokerages that really were successful in the investment piece. And I would love to do more and more of that. So I'm hoping to do that. Like long term, like, oh man, like I'd love to just be involved with helping entrepreneurs. And I think like real estate's a great application for that, right? There's so many, especially even just real estate agents. There's so many agents that are entrepreneurial, but I'd love to even like expand and do more like, if I could be involved in coaching business owners, someday I would love that. Like that sounds like a lot of fun. And, I think we're just trying to, just enjoy our life as much as possible. I think we can have all these aspirations, but I think it's super easy to miss these windows of time that we don't get back with our families. I think a lot of what I do in trying to create freedom with my time is so that I can be present and be available for my family. We've got 5 kids, they're like ages 8 all the way to 18. We have 4 girls and 1 boy. We're doing like coaching soccer practices. We're at soccer games on the weekend. We're down in Sacramento in the Bay Area for like my girls' dance competitions. And these are things that being an entrepreneur has afforded us, right? Not just the ability to go, but the ability to like just be there and be present in that moment. And I think that was one of the driving factors, even just for getting involved in real estate, getting out of, someone else paying me by the hours, to be able to have this option, to be able to have this freedom of time. Mm-hmm. Like that's what we're fighting for. Money is kind of representative of like the amount of freedom that you can have with your time. Yeah. And when we lose that perspective and we're just trying to get money for itself, like you just get lost.
Yeah.
You just get so spun out, because you lost like the center of like why you were doing what you're doing in the first place.
Right.
So I think it's really easy to get caught up in that part of it. And I'm trying to stay centered and grounded and, be someone that my kids want to hang out with when I'm older. So, and I think I'm, trying to invest in that now. Like, cause I think sometimes we're like, okay, like I'll become a millionaire and then like I'll have more, time, but then it's like you kind of miss that window where your kids really wanted you.
Kids really want to be around you when they're young, aren't they?
They do. Yeah. And it's like later in life, like the roles are reversed where you're kind of like, hey, when you guys want to hang out? Like, because you figure out money stuff, but then it's like, as your kids get older, like they're just going to get busy,
Right.
So I think just trying to I think that part of my future is like part of what I'm trying to prepare for too. It's like, what does my family life look like? Do my kids still like me in 10 years or 20 years,
Yeah.
So I'm kind of fighting for that and trying to do the best I can. So
it's hard. It's not easy. Well done. 5 kids. Woo! I have 4.
We got a 4, man. It's awesome.
Wow. 5 is no small task. Yeah. So what do you like to do for fun? What do you do for fun? How do you recharge? How do you get all that stress off of you? Because you're carrying a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, I like to stay active. Like I like to play like sports just for fun, like basketball, like soccer for fun. Work out a bit, do like weighted backpack walking occasionally. Listen to an audible book. I grew up as an only child, so I think a lot of my recharging comes like when I'm alone, which is a little bit tougher to do when you've got a big family. But I think that sometimes that really helps me just to, like go on a walk or just go for a drive or something, and just like just think for a bit. So.
Okay, my final 2 questions are: 1, what's your favorite real estate book?
It's got to be Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mean, I read it like at the beginning, and then like I read it again a couple of years ago, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, it's just so good. Like I feel like it's one of those things that tends to get better with time. Kiyosaki's a little bit crazy now, like some of the stuff like I've heard say, but like it doesn't change the book though. Some of the stuff you drop in that book is just a life changer. So
yeah, it's an easy read. It's well written. And then if you were to start over again, what piece of advice would you give your beginner newbie real estate investor self? What would you tell them?
Yeah. I mean, obviously we've done really good with single families, but if I could go back, I'd be like, hey, start with multis. Like start with a duplex, triplex, fourplex, anything that's more than 1 unit or has a guest house. Like, because I think that ability to create income, like just adds to your leverage. So I think it would probably be further down the road, as far as like income streams and all sorts of stuff. So I think if I could start over, I would really focus in on multifamilies.
Would you use hard money?
Real untapped power in that. What's that?
Would you use hard money lending sooner?
Yeah, for sure. I think that opens up a ton of doors. I mean, if you can't get the amount of capital available to most people just on their personal income is never going to be enough.
Yeah.
You have to really lean into these relationships that we have in order to establish like trust with private money. And if you don't have that, then we've got to figure out, well, how do I partner with somebody in order to do that? And if you can't partner with somebody, then like you got to do private money. There's got to be a way to like add layers of leverage to what we're doing. And all the people that I know that have just like scaled, it's never with their own money. Never. They've never done it on the backs of their own personal income, because you can never like really make enough money to get to that scale. It's virtually impossible. And I think that that's the lie that we buy into at first. Like, well, I can't invest because I don't have enough cash on my own. And I think that's just one of those things that you have to literally like change the way you think about it. Like your mindset has to change. And I know that like all the entrepreneurs and gurus are always talking about mindset, but it's totally true. Like you have to think about it differently, because the way you think about it like holds you back. And so I think that, embracing that part of the business is really important. So
yeah, 100%. When people say they have a money problem, I don't have enough, there's lack, there's scarcity, I realize that it's not a money problem. It's actually a knowledge problem, number one. And it's also a network problem. It's like you're not connected with those that have money. It's like, it's okay to not have money, but we want to find access to money, and people have money and want to invest. And
they do. Like our private lender is stoked about like our partnership. Like they love it. They want us to do it again. Like it was a huge win for them just as much as it was for us. And I would take it even one step further. It's not even a money problem. It's a deal problem. Because if you can be a deal finder, money will find you. Like people will come out of the woodworks if you can be someone who finds a good deal.
Guys, if you just heard that, you need to write that down. That alone is it. Find good deal. Deals attract money, right?
Yep, for sure.
So good. Daniel Miller.
Yeah.
You're an awesome dude. I want to personally get to know you better. If people want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, on Instagram, just with Daniel Miller is a handle, just kind of talking about entrepreneurial stuff. And I have a real estate specific account, danielmiller.realtor. So those are both great resources. So.
Yeah, guys, if you need a realtor to help you buy, sell property, highly recommend Daniel and his team. These guys are amazing.
Appreciate that.
And not only that, it's like I'm friends with some of the realtors that work for you, and I've heard nothing but good things about you as a leader.
That's cool.
And that's just
Thanks,
amazing.
Man.
That just shows like your character, high level person. You care about people. So it's fun to just like chat with you, get to know you more.
Yeah, for sure.
Grab coffee.
I feel like we could like keep on going. So appreciate you having me. It's a real privilege. So
yeah, let's grab coffee sometime. And I'm sure there's a lot of stories we could share.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. So cool.
All right.
That's it, man. So I really appreciate you being on.
Yeah. I appreciate you inviting me, man. This is super fun. It's super fun just to be able to talk about all this stuff, you know?
See, awesome. Sweet, bro. Thanks, man. Thanks for being on. And
appreciate it.
We'll be in touch.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Sounds good.
All right, buddy.
Thanks. Bye.